Okay, hi everyone. My name is Susana Paredo Swab. Welcome to Mindfulness for Creatives. I am the founder and executive director of Vanguard Culture. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit dedicated to advancing San Diego's creative workforce. This workshop is part of our Forum Professional Development Series, which presents a variety of programs aimed to give creatives the tools and the resources to make a living doing what they love. So, from financial management to how to build a website to how to do your taxes, our programs are made possible thanks to our generous professional development sponsors, Jack Lample, the San Diego Commission for Arts and Culture, the California Arts Council, and the Previs Foundation. Thank you so much for supporting our work. For more information about our upcoming programs, please access our website, www.vanguardculture.org. And to access past workshops and resources, you can also visit our YouTube page. We are so honored to be partnering with mindfulness teacher Wilda Wong on this 2-hour mindfulness workshop. It's specifically geared toward creative professionals, and we hope that this workshop will empower you to be more mindful and more intentional about your life and your creative career. With that, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Wilda Wong. Wilda is a professionally trained and qualified to teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, through the UCSD Center for Mindfulness-Based Professional Training Institute. She first encountered MBSR in 2015 and credits mindfulness for helping her cultivate a more holistic understanding of her mind, body, and emotions, as well as a deeper empathy, compassion, and gratitude to herself and others. She can be found on Instagram at momenttomoment.co, and I'll put all of the links of the information that I just shared in the chat. Thank you so much for being here, Wilda. I'll pass the torch on to you, and thank you so much for leading us in this practice today.
Thank you so much, Susanna. Just doing a voice check. Can everyone hear me okay? Fabulous. And I know a few folks have their cameras off. If you feel okay turning on your camera for just a moment, I would love to see your faces and say hello, and feel free to share your name and where you're joining from in the chat as well. So today we have sort of an intention setting workshop that is grounded in mindfulness practice. And I also just wanted to share that even though I am trained to teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, this workshop should not be considered as an MBSR course. I am borrowing a lot of elements from MBSR and the curriculum to form this workshop, but they're very different things. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. As you may imagine, in a mindfulness class, we'll be sort of paying a lot of attention and noticing what is arising for us in the body, including our emotions and thoughts. And so to that end, I highly encourage you all and invite you all to pay attention to what is going on in the body and nourish what is needing to be nourished. So for example, if you just need to get up and stretch at any point in the workshop, please feel free to do so. You do not have to raise your hand or ask for permission. Need to have a bio break, just please go ahead and take care of that. There's no officially scheduled breaks in this workshop. So it's really important for us to just pay attention and notice what is arising. And of course, in the guidance, I will also share if anything becomes too intense, any emotions or thoughts or sensations in the body that become too intense, to see if you can gently back out of the practice and maybe even step away for a moment as needed. So it's a lot of noticing going on. To me, that is what mindfulness is about. And I'm curious to hear from the group. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have that capability within the Zoom to unmute yourself or type in the chat. Just curious to hear what sort of practices might you already have, mindfulness practices or any sort of practice that might be gratitude based or meditation based. I'm curious to see what what people are already practicing in your life. So feel free to unmute or share in the chat if you feel open to do so.
Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Miguel.
Hi, Wilda.
Nice to see you.
Mm, Hi, good to see you too. I'll be sharing regarding my mindfulness practice. Currently, it's pausing and like just going into quietness. I don't know how best to explain it, but just pausing, especially, and then that in combination with doing something physical, like changing an action, which I've learned through like my own recovery journey. So I'll, for example, if I'm up in my head about something and I can't snap out of it, then I'll my go-to is I'll go and do push-ups. I'll crunch out like 10 or 15 push-ups. And then from there I'll do some yoga-based stretches, and then like a slow just like yoga-based spine awareness stretches, and then I do like a combination, just like things that I've picked up along the way. So that's one of the things that I do.
Thank you for sharing, Miguel.
You're
Anyone
welcome.
else like to share?
I'll share.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
Wilda. Hi. I am a longtime meditator from way back, but had let go of my practice of meditation for many, many years and brought that back in maybe about a year ago. And so I've been sitting every day, kind of a Vipassana based 20-minute sit, which has been great. And though I'd like to build in some other practices, I'd say the only other one that I really have is, like Miguel said, a physical discharge kind of. I've been working out just about every day, which I find I really need to be able to settle in to my body. So Renegade Fit has been this little haven, and I'm really enjoying that. I don't use it so much as a check into my body, a way to get back into my body, but it's a good practice. And then I'd love to build in some writing discipline. I'm coming back to writing, and I've never really had discipline around that. I just kind of get these lightning strikes. So not quite sure what to do there, but this seemed like a great invitation. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Ali. Would anyone else like to share?
I can share that mindfulness for me came around COVID, um, where things were just getting really intense and I was starting to get panic attacks. And so I started really throwing myself into mindfulness and trying to understand it a little better to get a hold on that. Um, and so now it's been wonderful for me. I've really tried to implement it as often as possible. And unfortunately, these last few months, I think I sort of have dropped off of it. And there has been something calling me to write more often. So I bought a journal with prompts in it, and I've been every day just responding to these little prompts. And first, it started off just very simple little quick answers, but now I'm watching the journal entries get longer and longer, which is very pleasing. So I'm hoping that that turns into something by the end of the year, that I can be proud of.
A novel in the making. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful practices. I'm hearing themes of, shifting energy in the body, whether that's through movement or push-ups, going to the gym. I'm hearing themes about writing and journaling, meditation, different forms of it. And so my definition of mindfulness comes from John Kabat-Zinn, who is often credited with, creating the mindfulness-based stress reduction or MBSR curriculum. about 40 years ago now. So it's got a few decades of study and practice and a bunch of participants around the world. So for me, mindfulness can be described as moment to moment, non judgmental awareness. And that's a very simple descriptor of what mindfulness is, but simple is not easy, right? Like, how often are we truly completely non judgmental every moment of every day, and aware every moment of every day, right? So at least I know that I'm not, even though that is where I would love to be. But, I'm human just like anyone else. So, but mindfulness for me is the noticing. So, as we move through some of the practices and some of the prompts today, as I hinted at earlier, the noticing I feel is the most important thing that we can practice today. And so, even if you're noticing that you're not feeling any particular emotions, or if you're not feeling any particular physical sensations or anything of that sort, I just want to name that that is in itself a form of noticing, you know. So practicing that is, I think, really cool, and helping us to cultivate that sense of awareness from moment to moment. So at this point, I would like to invite us, if you feel comfortable where you are, to just arrive into this moment. And it may be take a few moments to, I'm just going to set my timer here. Maybe gently closing the eyes if you feel comfortable. Adjusting the body in a posture that you find supportive. So maybe that's just simply staying seated where you are in this moment. And if you have your feet on the floor, on the earth, just simply noticing the feet planted firmly on the floor. If you're seated in a different posture, if you're standing, just simply noticing the weight of the body on the surface that is supporting you in this moment. So perhaps noticing the buttocks being supported by the chair or a cushion or blankets, whatever your setup is. Noticing how the spine is in this moment. Just noticing where the hands are in this moment. Noticing the shoulders, the neck, the head. And just simply noticing without feeling the need to change anything about the posture that you're in this moment. And then perhaps starting to bring your attention to the breath. And again, without feeling the need to change the breath in any way, just simply noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. So as you draw air in, noticing the air entering the nostrils or the mouth. Noticing that air, that breath, traveling down the nostrils, down the esophagus, perhaps, into the lungs. Noticing perhaps the rising and falling of the chest. Perhaps any movement in the belly, noticing that. And also noticing the out breath as you exhale the air from your nose or from the mouth. And just holding your attention with the breath for a few more breaths. And you're welcome to play with the breath here as well if you want to try drawing in deeper breaths. You're welcome to do that. Just taking in the air and perhaps holding at the top of the breath. Perhaps sighing as you exhale, just playing with the breath. Just whatever you want to do in this moment with the breath. And then allowing yourself to return to breathing in a normal rhythm. And I invite you to perhaps recognize or acknowledge where you are or how you're doing today so far, the morning that you've had, the day that you've had so far. Perhaps recognizing the transition that you've had from what took place earlier in the day to where we are in this current moment. Just taking stock of that and seeing if any emotions or thoughts or physical sensations come up when I ask you to do that. Perhaps you've had a busy morning, or perhaps you've had a slow start, just allowing yourself to savor your tea or coffee. And then now arriving in this moment, this brand new moment, where we get to be together for the next little bit. And then feel free to gently sort of wiggle the fingers and toes, perhaps do a little bit of swaying wherever you're seated. Just inviting movement into the body. And fluttering the eyes open if they were closed. And we'll go ahead and transition into some gentle movement. So you're welcome to stay in the space where you are if you have some space to get up and move about. But these gentle movements are really exactly that. There's nothing very strenuous about them. And you're, of course, welcome to modify them in a way that makes sense for you and the body today. And a lot of these postures that I demonstrate can also be done seated in a chair if you wanted to practice in a chair, in a seated posture. But if you are choosing to stand, I invite you to sort of stand with your feet about hip width distance apart. And just taking a moment here to perhaps just noticing the feet being planted firmly on the earth. You're welcome to close the eyes again if you feel comfortable. Just noticing the body being here, the weight being supported by the floor. And just taking a few breaths here. Noticing how the transition from perhaps being seated or in a different posture to now standing. Just noticing how the transition feels in the body. Noticing any changes in sensations. And you're welcome to flutter the eyes open again if you wish. And we'll just start with gently kind of rolling our shoulders in one direction. So just taking your time to roll those shoulders back or forward, whichever direction you're choosing. And And just modifying this posture to whatever the body is calling for in this moment at any time. And feel free to switch the direction of the shoulder rolls in this moment. And we'll just allow the body to pause right here in this moment, having experienced just a tad of gentle movement to sort of notice if anything is arising in the body. So this is giving us an opportunity to practice that moment to moment awareness, just noticing what is arising in the body and seeing if any judgments are arising about what just transpired. And then now I invite you to gently start raising the arms and the hands, taking your time, and perhaps synchronizing it with the breath if you like. Just raising those arms all the way overhead. And if you like, you're welcome to perhaps gently look up towards the hands, towards the sky. And then gently bring them back down by the sides of the body. And just feel free to practice that for a few rounds at your own pace. And again, you're welcome to play with the pacing, perhaps synchronizing with the breath. And just noticing if any preferences are arising in terms of the pacing that you're playing with. Are you noticing that you prefer to raise your arms up very quickly, very fast? Or perhaps you're enjoying the slower pace? Just noticing all these things. You can try closing the eyes if you like. And just a couple more at your own pace. And once more, I invite you to allow the body to pause. Once again, finding this mountain posture of having your feet about hip width distance apart, hands by the sides of the body, and just simply notice. We've done a few rounds of raising our arms overhead, just seeing if any sensations are arising here. And if you're not noticing any sensations, that in itself is also noticing what is going on in the body. And if you'd like to join me in starting to swing the body side by side, you're welcome to do so. So we're pivoting one foot up as we turn in the other direction and sort of allowing our palms, the palms of our hands and the backs of the hands to sort of massage the kidneys a little bit here. So you're welcome to have them kind of sway and see where they land on your body, if that feels okay for you. And you can play again with the pace at which you're doing this, perhaps very fast or very, very gentle and slow. Just starting to shift some energy in the body here, invite some movement. And if this is not what the body is calling for you in this moment, feel free to invite any other kind of stretching or movement that does feel right for you. And allowing the body to gently slow down from the swaying if that's what you were doing. And just starting to come back to center, come back to the mountain, feet planted on the ground, hands by the sides of the body. And once more, just begin to notice if anything else arising for you. Perhaps noticing a slightly faster heartbeat in this moment, perhaps noticing a little bit of warmth in the belly, perhaps noticing the breathing is a little bit different from just the moment before. And next, I invite you to practice any stretching or any movement that feels nourishing to you in this moment. So perhaps that's a forward bend, perhaps that's a down dog, or just some stretches that the body is calling for. Just free movement. And if movement is not right for you, then perhaps taking a rest. And whatever you're practicing in this moment, gently start to wrap up and slowly taking your time, finding your way back to the seat. So I'm curious if anyone wants to share from just a little tiny bit of gentle movement, if you noticed anything arising for you, if there were any thoughts or emotions or physical sensations. If anyone wants to share, feel free to come off mute or share in the chat. What did you notice?
I can just share quickly. I've been noticing as I sit down to do something that I really want to accomplish, I'll start to get sleepy. And this is kind of a new trend. And I'm reserving all of my physical activity for my workouts. And doing something like this is really enlivening. It brings me back. So I'm going to put that in my pocket.
Enlivening. Wow, what a word. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else like to share? What did you notice? What came up?
Well, what came up for me was your reminder at the beginning and the disclaimer about like if um what how I interpret it was just going easy on ourselves, and I had to jump in late and transfer over to my laptop. So then I'm like, okay, I'm not doing it perfectly. It's okay, like I can still listen and be present and be um hearing it and listening it and digesting it, and then I'll join. So it's kind of like being nice to myself for not being perfect or not being like following the agenda, like this following the script, because and so I am grateful for what you told us at the beginning, regarding that,
Mm,
as far as like just being organic and kind of like listening and paying attention to like our needs, because I think our needs are also within us, and sometimes they're like environmental needs, right? Or familial needs. So that's how I experienced it right now.
mm. Yes, thank you, Miguel. Yeah, it sounds like you practice a lot of noticing and perhaps, just being compassionate with yourself. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing. Okay, so at this time, I think I'm going to share my screen, and let me know if you don't see what I'm trying to share, but it's going to be a little window with a little slide on there. Okay, great. So you see a slide that says mindful intention setting on there. I'm just going to advance a couple of slides. See if I can. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to pause there. So you all signed up to set some intentions for the rest of this year. And I was chatting with Susanna about the kind of flow of today. And it is my belief that, we can't really, or it's not that we can't, but it's perhaps helpful to do a little bit of reflection before we dive right into setting intentions for the next however many months or days ahead. So my invitation to you now is to sort of do a little bit of reflecting. And why is it important to do some reflecting? Well, this is a very nerdy slide that I'm going to share for what it's called the adult learning cycle. And you might be like, what does that have to do with mindfulness? But I think reflection is paying attention, right? Noticing what has come up for us now, and also just acknowledging what has come up before this moment. The learning cycle basically is what you see here, borrowing this from a Rockwood Leadership Institute program that I participated in, being, reflecting and discovering and planning and acting. So there's this cycle that we sort of can start to implement and think about. starting with reflecting and discovering is what I hope to have us practice a little bit of today. The planning and acting is all up to you, but as a group together, we can perhaps start to reflect a little bit on what happened. What happened this month so far into the new year? What happened last year, the last several months? So the next little piece, I'm going to guide us in sort of I'm going to read some statements that are related to wellness. And you're welcome to close the eyes if you feel comfortable. You're also welcome to sort of, just noticing what is happening, arising in terms of thoughts, feelings, any physical sensations that come up as I'm reading these statements. And as you hear me read these statements, if you want to start writing down things that are coming up for you, that's okay. And if you want to just close the eyes completely and sort of do some silent reflecting, that's okay too. Whatever makes sense for you. And so if you feel compelled to close the eyes, you are welcome to do so. And I'll just read some statements and just start to notice. I have time to play in ways that refresh and renew me. What does that bring up for you? I am energized and ready to go at the start of my day. I regularly get a good night's sleep. I effectively notice and manage stress as it arises. I can take on my current workload with ease and consistency. I have time to daydream and reflect. During the day, I take time to notice when I'm hungry, tired, need a break, or other physical needs. And as a reminder, as I'm reading these statements, just noticing any physical sensations, any thoughts, any feelings that are arising, and also noticing any judgment that is arising too in this moment. So next one is, I periodically renew my energy throughout the day, every day. I eat food that satisfies me and sustains my energy throughout the day. I often have ways to express my creativity. I have time to enjoy my hobbies. Those who love and care about me are happy with my life's balance. I spend enough time with family and friends. I take time to participate in fun activities with others. I feel connected to and aware of my body's needs. I take time to pause and reset now and again. I am satisfied with my balance of solitude and engagement with others. I make time for joy and connection. I feel at peace. And at the end of the day, I am content and ready to sleep. So just taking a moment here to notice anything that is arising for you. What are you noticing? And if the eyes are closed, gently fluttering them open, coming back to the group. And I would just love to hear if anyone wants to quickly share what came up for you during this practice. What did you notice?
I found myself focusing on all the things I didn't do or I didn't agree with in all those statements. Like all those statements sounded like the ideal life. And I focused on the ones I wasn't hitting, like those targets I wasn't hitting. And I wrote those down, like, oh yeah, that's something I have to do. That's something I have to do. But there was a lot of judgment there for sure.
Now, noticing judgment, and what's really interesting to me, and thank you for sharing, Susanna, is that you're kind of focusing more on the ones that you didn't agree with, that you feel didn't happen for you, perhaps rather than focusing on the ones that you did agree with or that did happen for you. I mean, isn't that interesting how the human brain works? Like we focus on, in MBSR classes, we often talk about how negative thoughts are like Velcro, they just stick. And positive thoughts and emotions are like Teflon. They just slide right off, and you might notice the pleasantness in the moment, but then thinking back a lot of the times, people might remember more the negative framing of things. So that's really interesting, Susanna, what you shared about remembering the statements that you disagreed with or focusing on that. Thank you for sharing. Did anyone else have a similar experience or a very different experience with that practice?
I had an experience of guilt.
Mm.
Well, at the beginning of some of the first ones, because I felt like I was in agreement, and then I was feeling guilty for for having time to be introspective, for mm, yeah, for not producing the societal material wealth, or being you know, being up in my head too much, which I really enjoy when I'm enjoying it a little bit more lately when I'm using it creatively and in more healthy manners and avenues, such as writing, such as like free writing, or doing gratitude lists. But yeah, definitely I kept feeling some guilt with having too much, maybe giving myself too much time to reset,
Hmm.
not being in a more like productive, like mode or something. I don't know, I can't explain it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Miguel. So it sounds like you were noticing guilt and noticing something around productivity, like maybe there's a certain level of productivity that you're supposed to reach and that you're not reaching.
Correct.
Um,
Hmm.
okay, thank you for sharing. Yes, Allie.
I feel like I want to give other people a chance to talk too. But dovetailing again on what Miguel has said, um, I didn't, there was no self recrimination. I think I preserved that for my day-to-day noticing. um, my self-care, I think, is really strong. I do have a lot of time to do that, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of strategy in that, because when I've in the past worked really hard and gotten very stressed and off balance, it feels like deeply threatening to me. And so I've backed off of work, I think, and strategize that balance by making sure that I eat and exercise, and my sleep is not good. But, like I can see how I've prioritized some of those other things just to keep an even keel.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Ali. And those with their cameras off are welcome at any time to also unmute or even share in the chat anything that comes up for you at any time. But for now, I'm going to move us on to next little bit here. I would love for us to take out a blank sheet of paper, whatever paper you have in front of you, writing instrument, and just sort of draw a circle and put in 8 slices. And you're welcome to use these labels. These are just kind of pre-populated labels. You may have very different priorities and segments in your life than these. So if they don't all resonate for you, feel free to change up a label or ignore a couple of the slices. And so the exercise here is to simply kind of using markers or pen, whatever crayons, whatever you have in front of you, to kind of color in each slice based on how you feel or how fulfilled you feel in that area of your life. So, for instance, I'm hearing a lot of references to physical activity. So, that might be a full slice for you, in terms of your physical and emotional health, how you're taking care of yourself in that way. However, maybe the, hobbies and interests are kind of, not doing so hot as you kind of allocate more of your time to work or to other things in your life. So this is just sort of a way to visually represent for ourselves, kind of like, oh, what are some areas? How do I feel about these labels and these kind of aspects of my life? So let me know if you have any questions about this exercise, and I'll just give us about like several minutes to kind of fill this in. Like let's say about 5 minutes to fill in these slices, and we can come back.
So these are just Wilda. So these are just kind of like words or reactions that we have to, or just feelings that arise with these categories, with these slices.
Yeah, so you can color in the slices based on how full or how kind of empty in the tank you feel, let's say based on the last year.
Gotcha.
So you can like, I'm kind of like doing this, sort of thing. So you can do
Okay.
whatever you want. And
Oh, I
also
mean,
change up the, yeah,
okay.
and just change up the labels too if they don't resonate for you.
Thank you.
One more minute here. So you're welcome to stay here and continue coloring in the slices, but I also have some journaling prompts that I invite us to spend about the next 10 minutes reflecting on. And for this portion, if you feel that writing in a journal is not what is resonating for you, perhaps you can paint a picture, perhaps you can draw or sketch, even write a poem, whatever you feel inspired to do. I mean, I believe we're all creative people, whether we're in a creative industry or not. So choosing something that speaks to you. If you have any color markers or crayons in front of you, you're welcome to use that and just kind of start kind of drawing things that come up. But these are the prompts here that I'm going to share. And it sort of relates to what we've already been reflecting on. Which areas of your health and well-being do you feel satisfied with that can serve as models for your success for the next month, maybe the next 2 months, maybe this year? So you determine the time frame that you're thinking about. What are the 3 most important areas that need your attention in your practice of health and well-being? And of these 3, which is the primary area that you want to focus on or change to be a more sustainable and healthy creative, or can serve as a catalyst for improving in other areas? And what else might improve if this area improves for you? So feel free to just take a moment to jot down any thoughts or feelings that arise as you see these prompts in front of you. Perhaps also noticing any physical sensations that arise as you're looking at these. Just practice noticing. So I'll give us about 10 minutes here. About another 90 seconds here. So how was that experience for you? Reflecting on these questions and coloring in the slices of the pie, not what you put, but how was that experience for you? Does anyone care to share? What did you notice? I can actually share a little bit because I did this alongside you all. I was coloring in the slices and just I was really grateful that one of the slices was something that I had put in sort of a passion planner, many, just pre-COVID, as something that I wanted to pay attention to, and in order to allow myself to live a little bit more freely with less worry. So I'm happy and grateful to see that as of this year, I feel that slice is pretty fulfilled, or I've made a lot of progress in that slice. And so what I thought I could learn from that is, it really took a lot of intention and also tactics, so like action steps based on that intention of improving that slice of the pie. And it took a few years for me to get to a point where I feel pretty good about it. And then I think what also came up for me as I was filling in the other slices was some of which you've already shared, is that guilt and judgment. I also noticed that for myself of, ooh, I haven't really paid a lot of attention to these couple of other slices. So those are some things that came up for me. Curious if anyone had a similar or very different experience working through these.
I think there's something about putting it down on paper and seeing the visual representation of the things that are lacking, and somehow, without seeing it on paper, they're just sort of floating in the ethos, and you just sort of say, oh, I should do more of that, or I should do more of this. But there's something about seeing it that kind of made me realize that they're not going to change unless I do something about it. It's somehow like I think maybe it was just expecting that those things should get better um, when they were just in the ethos. But now that I see them, I'm like, oh well, then maybe if I was more intentional about that part, then I would be able to fill in. If I was more intentional about this, then I would be able to fill it. And so it did help to see it physically represented. Like, oh wait a minute. It's not just going to happen. I have to I have to act. um, and it seems like so obvious, but it's something just clicked for me right there.
Thank you for sharing, Susanna. And I'm also curious about the use of the word should. Like, who is saying that you should?
Right. Me.
Where does that word come from? You, okay.
It comes from perfectionism, which
Mm,
is, something that I fight against. And I see it in my children, that sense of need to be perfect. And I
mm,
certainly don't instill that in him or her, directly. I don't say like, this has to be perfect. It's the contrary. I'm always trying to push against that because they're so hard on themselves. But it
mhm.
comes from somewhere. I mean, it's our DNA, probably. I think both parents are very like perfectionists, and then
Mm,
we realize how hard that is, that it can be very hard to live as a perfectionist. Like you feel like you can't move forward without
mhm.
like you can't do anything unless it's perfect, and that becomes this big barrier to doing anything. And I've learned to push through that in my career and all of that, but not without like emotional struggle and stress and everything that comes with it. So you're right.
Yeah.
Who says should? Me.
Thank you for
So
sharing. I guess my invitation here is not that I think you should do this, but it's an invitation. Take it or leave it, right? But I invite you to maybe think about the things that came up for you in this exercise as like, what if I did this? Sort of inviting a little bit more of exploration and playfulness into the question. So, what if I, for me personally, right? What if I were to um, practice more physical exercise rather than, oh, I really should do more physical exercise. So, a slight shift in that framing. So, that's my invitation to sort of bring in a little bit more experimentation and play rather than sort of a perfectionist standard of I really should do this and I really got to do that. Did anything else come up that anyone wants to share with the group?
Um, rather than share, I have a question about what you just said. Was
Yeah.
was the reframe what would look different if this changed? I missed
Mm-hmm.
it.
I think
Okay.
more, yeah, I think that's along the lines of my invitation is what if you were to bring a little bit more curiosity
Hmm.
into the question?
Yeah.
So kind of asking yourself, like, what if I were to do more of this, or what if I were to practice this? What if I were to pay attention to this aspect of my life that I wasn't previously paying attention to? So trying to frame the question in a way that doesn't sound super judgy, like, man, I really should do more of this, you know. As a reminder, sometimes meditation can be sort of thought of as the practice of non-doing. So as we set intentions for today, I'm really careful to not ask that we list out all these SMART goals that we're going to have for the rest of the year. It's sort of to notice like what are some areas that we might want to invite a little bit more play and curiosity into our lives. So perhaps that slight reframing is something you can play with if that resonates for you. And not trying, but sort of thinking about it in a way that is maybe a little bit less judgmental, maybe a little bit more compassionate to what Miguel was sharing earlier today. But Yeah, does that answer or address what you were? Okay. And Miguel, you had your mute off. I'm curious if you were gonna say something.
I would you mind putting up the pie chart again so I can kind of correspond to, please? Mm, yeah, so like the ones that, okay, so when I was filling out the pie chart, I had fun with that one. It was the one, my observation is that the ones where I were like the spirituality one, I've been on this like inner journey. Just I've had a lot of the spirituality part of my life has been growing um a lot this past year, and that was really fun for me to fill out, very easy. This is what my chart looks like. um the ones where I had a challenge that I thought was interesting was um like the romance and relationships, and then the family and friends. I was really tentative about those because I felt like it involved. I started thinking about like how they're perceiving me instead of like how I'm perceiving the romance the relationship and my relationship with my friends. I right away I went to like, well, how are they judging me? How good of a boyfriend am I right now? How good of a friend have I been? And so then I had to like pause, and I had to, and that really, I'm like, wait a minute, no, this is kind of like how I'm perceiving it, right? So that was kind of like really interesting to assess. And then one that I noticed that was really interesting for me is I saw the finance and the work and professional development. They're very similar. So like, which is kind of like a good indicator of what I've been, um, the part of my life that I've been trying to improve on, which is work and professional development is directly correlate, like they might be across each other in the pie for a reason. I'm guessing, I'm theorizing here, but they were almost very similar. I'm like, okay, those are easy because they're they're related. But the physical health and the emotional health and the spirituality were very similar. I'm finding like that a lot of like the spiritual inner journey is really helping with the emotional health. So those were almost kind of like the same. The physical environment really was really fun for me to fill out because I moved. I was like, yes, that one. And I picked a cool color, like my turquoise pen, because it was enjoyable mm, to confirm that and to embrace that living in a new place and having a new space, which has been momentous, in my life. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you, Miguel. It sounds like there's a fair amount of joy that came up for you as you were completing the pie
Yeah,
slices or coloring in.
yep. I felt like elementary school again. It was cool.
That's beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. So we're now, in the second half of the workshop. And, if you, just a reminder, if you need to get up and, just nourish the body in any way that is calling for snacks, hydration, bio break, just feel free to go ahead and do that. I'm going to move us forward to another kind of mindfulness practice called awareness of the breath. So I will just change the slide here so that it's not on this. I'll come back to this blank slide. And just finding a posture that feels supportive for you in this moment. You're welcome to now change perhaps position or maybe find a seat on the floor. If you are seated on the floor, I invite you to just maybe put a cushion or a blanket underneath your buttocks so that the knees are a little bit lower than the hips. You're welcome to stand. We'll just be here very briefly. I'll set a timer as well for us. And if you feel comfortable, gently closing the eyes, just settling into the body, noticing again the surface that is supporting the body in this moment. So feeling the points of contact that the body is making with whatever surface you're on. Maybe feeling the feet firmly planted on the floor, or perhaps feeling the buttocks on the seat. If you're lying down, then feeling the earth supporting your entire body, making contact with many points across the body. And so awareness of the breath is exactly what it sounds like. We are simply paying attention to our breathing. So we started practicing a little bit of this in the last hour, where we started noticing inhale, the air entering the body, and noticing the exhales, the air exiting the body. And so this time, similarly, noticing the air and perhaps noticing the temperature of the air as it enters the nostrils or the mouth. Noticing as the breath travels down into the lungs and feeling the chest rise and fall with each breath. And if you like, you're welcome to place a hand on your chest and perhaps the other hand on the belly to really feel the physicality of the breath in this moment, feeling the belly rising and falling, feeling the chest rising and falling. And without feeling the need to change the breath in any way, unless, of course, you want to play with the breaths and perhaps taking in deeper breaths or shallower breaths, whatever the body is calling for you to do. Following the journey of the breath, the full cycle of the breath. As we breathe in, we know that we're breathing in. As we breathe out, we know that we're breathing out. And my invitation to you is to perhaps allowing your attention to rest where you're feeling the breath most vividly in this moment. So perhaps that's feeling the cool air enter the nostrils and allowing your attention to rest there in the nostrils. And if you're feeling the breath most vividly in the rising and falling of the chest, then allowing your attention to rest there on the chest. And anywhere else you're feeling the breath the most in this moment. Maybe you're noticing how warm the air feels as you exhale, as the breath leaves the body. Perhaps you can hear the sounds of the breath in this moment. And if you notice the mind wandering, see if you can gently guide your attention back to the breath. The physical nature of the breath. Perhaps the pace of the breath, just paying attention to that for a moment. And now gently start to invite some movement into the body, perhaps rolling the neck. Perhaps some wiggling of the toes and the fingers, stretching the arms, maybe some side bends. Gently fluttering the eyes open if they were closed. And bringing that gentle attention back to the screen, back to the group. So now we're really going to get into the intention setting, which is what you are all here to do. So my guidance for this next portion is, if you have access to magazines or clippings or anything that you want to create a collage around and build a vision board with, you're welcome to do that. You're welcome to sketch or draw what is coming to mind for you as to what you want the next, whatever time chunk you're working with, maybe the next 8 weeks, maybe the next half a year, the next year, the rest of this calendar year, whatever it is, you determine the time frame that you're setting your intentions around. You can do a mind map. I did a mind map of my intentions towards the end of last year, and I really find mind mapping to be a really fun and helpful exercise. So I'll just briefly share kind of a quick mind map that might look like that of your intentions, and you can set themes for yourself. So for instance, some of my themes included exploration and play, and grace toward myself and others, joy, peace. So those are some themes for my intentions. And so for kind of setting our intentions for the year, the invitation is to keep them pretty high level for now. So think very general statements, kind of like, I am kind with myself and people around me, or I find joy in the everyday. So kind of very broad statements, or just broad visions that you might have if you're creating a mood board or a vision board with your intentions. You might want to craft some affirmations for yourself that resonate for you. Whatever feels right for you in this moment. Again, you can write a poem, you can draw, whatever is calling to you. So I'll set some time for us to do that, say 10 minutes. And I do have those of us who are very in touch with our emotions. I will share this slide here. This slide here is sort of a map of desired feelings. So if you are driven by emotion, if you're in touch with your emotion, this might resonate for you. You can sort of think about your intentions as to how do you want to feel by the end of the year, the month, by the end of the summer, whatever time period you're working with. So these are some sample emotions that you're welcome to kind of maybe engage or include in your intention setting. And so how that might show up is, for example, if you are really interested in learning about a particular thing, then you might want to invite curiosity. You might want to feel competent. You might want to feel useful or wise about a certain topic, right? So, or if you're building something, you might include words like creative and dedicated to the craft. So on and so forth. Some examples. And I'll put the map of feelings back up if that is helpful. And now for the next 3 minutes, I invite you to start to narrow down if you have multiple intentions in front of you. Narrow down to what is the one intention or commitment that you want to make for your own well-being and creativity. And I'll put that in the chat as well. My invitation is focusing on one. If you were to expand or elaborate on it, what is the one intention or commitment you want to make for your own well-being and creativity? Okay, now gently wrap up writing down that one commitment or intention that you want to focus on. And then gently bring your attention back to the group. And so after today, you may choose to look at that one intention or commitment that you just drafted to focus on. And from that, you can develop, a bunch of action items, perhaps, next steps, SMART goals, right? SMART goals being what is specific and measurable and attainable and relevant and time bound, all those things that sort of helps you hone in on how do you get there? Like you have this intention now, but how do you actually get there? So building a roadmap for yourself. We're not going to focus on that today. But that is for you to sort of explore and think through. How do you want to do that? There are a lot of different ways, and I definitely encourage and invite you all to invite that sense of curiosity and playfulness into creating that roadmap. I think less judgment and more play is probably going to make the journey a little bit more enjoyable, hopefully, for you. So that's my invitation for next steps. And I also just want to remind the group here that because with goal setting, even the term goal setting sometimes brings up feelings of, for me, I'm speaking for myself, the term goal setting brings up really iffy feelings for me. Like I start to feel the swirliness in my gut. I just have that. Whenever I hear goal setting, for some reason, it just doesn't. I don't know. It just doesn't sit well with my gut sometimes. Maybe very different for you, but it's easy to lose ourselves in all of the doing. So how do we allow ourselves to come back to the being? We are human beings first, even though sometimes it feels like we're humans doing. So kind of, balancing human being versus human doing, as, in terms of mindfulness, and how do we allow ourselves to focus on the breath and what is happening in each moment, in the present moment, and not get lost in all of the productivity and the doing and the creating all the time. And it came up earlier today, inviting you to think about what if, I were to approach something with a little bit more play, and a little bit less judgment. So maybe not saying to yourself, I should do this and I should do that, and rather asking yourself, what if I were to do a little bit more of this, or what if I were to do this a little bit differently? So that's an invitation. And I do want to have a little bit of time in case people have comments or questions, that you want to share with the group, asking each other, checking in. So if anyone has any comments or questions to share, please feel free to unmute yourself or share in the chat. How was this experience for you of reflecting and setting some intentions? What came up for you? What was the intention setting like for you? What did you notice?
Found it a little difficult to pick one that was going to be my main focus. But that's just sort of the workaholic in me, where I'm like, how to tackle all of them. But I do appreciate the simplicity of the one because it seems more manageable, and also throughout the workshop thinking about the non-judgmental part of it, this all, the the noticing, the non-judgmental noticing. Um, and I'm an imperfect person, like we all are, and so it's one of the things that I'm like, oh, I gotta be better at that, and so I have all these expectations, and and ironically I'm my own boss, though I'm the only one setting these really high expectations for myself. So I don't know, that was my takeaway. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Susanna. Would anyone else like to share your experience with intention setting today? Did you experience any challenges, any aha moments?
I'll share an aha moment with let's see. So I had a lot of intentions, and then also like Susanna was trying to figure out the one narrow it when you asked us to narrow it down. And I came with and I found and I chose the one that excited me the most, which was electric, because I wanted to I don't know, like I want to have like this I want to have like acting I want to like manifest like acting opportunities in theater um opportunities coming my way, and I felt like that was kind of a cool, like intention to have in general, because when something's electric, I think of light, I think of like moving towards light. And so that's the cool one that's the one that I'm gonna stick with. But then I also have like aligned and connected. There were two of the ones that I came up during my brainstorm, and then I realized that those are very similar. And so but connected, I think I'm gonna funnel the connected one and use that in my actions, because part of my connectivity intention is to travel to some different national parks this upcoming year. Like I've never been to the Grand Canyon. I've never been to Yosemite. And it's like, how can I? And so that's what I want to do. I'm like, okay, well, I think that if I that would be like that's gonna be a cool like action, like like legit, like literal action that I can do to connect. And then I have Mexico in there too, because I need to, go to the motherland and get to know the motherland a lot more. But as far as like accessible, those are kind of like cool ones that I'm excited about right now and walking away with. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Miguel. Those sound like very attainable goals. Yeah, thank you. So, unless anyone else has any other questions, I'll be here until the end of the hour. But if you want to private message me or email me, connect with me on Instagram, find me on my website, whatever you want to do, please connect with me. I would love to stay in touch with you all. And if you want to have any sort of brainstorming, even around your intention setting or reflections or mindfulness, MBSR, any of those things, I'm happy to connect. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me at my email address there, momenttomoment.co@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for your kind attention today, and noticing what is coming up for you isn't always easy. It sounds simple, but it's not always easy. I really appreciate you practicing some mindfulness together and setting some intentions together and sharing of yourself too. Really appreciate it.
I just want to remind everyone also, we dropped everything in the chat as well, but if you would like further resources to the organization, we have an entire professional development series that allows for how to do your taxes and marketing and branding and social media, all those things that they don't teach you in art school. So I definitely want to make sure that that's available to you, and they're all recorded, as this will also be up on our website on the YouTube page. So I definitely want to share that with you. And then also, if you are an arts lover, as most of you and all of you probably are, you probably want to sign up to our newsletter so that you can gather our further opportunities that are coming up in professional development. We have a finance course coming up in March on finance management for creatives, to help you get a hold of your personal finances and also your creative career, your finances around your creative career. So please sign up to our arts coverage and our newsletter with further opportunities. So, well, Da, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you all for joining in and opening up and sharing. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.
Take care. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.